Joining me now, former Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump surrogate and neurosurgeon, Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, thanks for joining us tonight. So as we heard, Donald Trump laid out key plans for his first 100 days in office, and I was just discussing it with Eric Trump, his son. What did you think of that contract with America?
Well, I think it was a very good idea for him to do that, particularly at this stage, because, as you know, people tend to have short memories. And people have been asking for some specifics, and he came out with some. I think at this time it's particularly important to emphasize the amount of corruption that's going on in Washington, D.C. Even before the WikiLeaks things came out, we knew that there was an enormous amount of corruption. And it was one of the things that I was most surprised by when I was running, the depth of corruption. And it's on both sides. So this election is not really so much about Republicans versus Democrats as it is the political establishment and the media versus the people. And I believe that the people are actually a lot smarter than the political class thinks they are. And they're taking all of this in. And when they go into those voting booths, they're going to be thinking about their children and their grandchildren and asking themselves, do we really want to put somebody who is extraordinarily dishonest and there's somebody who treats other people like absolute dirt? Is that the example that we want? And what will that lead to? And I think the American people are much smarter than anybody thinks they are.
Now, what do you think, Dr. Carson, about, the polling? Because one day you're up, one day you're down. We talked about the tracking, the LA Times, IBD polling, different from some of the other polling that's done in some of the battleground states. What's your level of concern tonight?
Well, it's fluctuated a lot. The electorate is quite volatile at this point. And one of the things you have to look at with these polls is, who are they polling? IBD and the LA Times, Rasmussen, they have a tendency to try to even out the people. Whereas some of these other polls, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% difference in favor of Democrats, that's not accurate polling. This is people trying to manipulate opinions and make people think this is all over and, join the bandwagon. Again, the media has really exposed itself during these last few months. I think you have to be pretty dense not to believe that they are totally in the tank for Hillary.
And you've seen this from the inside out, obviously campaigning for Donald Trump, but this is someone that you campaigned against in the beginning. You've seen some of the dirty tricks that happened while you were in those primaries. It was a tough battle there with 17 candidates. And now you see this information about corruption being exposed in WikiLeaks and videos from Project Veritas. Are you surprised at all, Dr. Carson, that some of this hasn't resonated more with people or, in fact, with the mainstream media?
Well, I think it probably is resonating silently. Recognize that the mainstream media is barely touching the stories about WikiLeaks, and some people, don't look at Fox News, so they don't actually know what's going on. And if you look at some of the other networks, particularly CNN, you get a completely divergent view. And you would think that Hillary Clinton was, the second coming.
Right.
So obviously, it depends on what you're looking at and who your groups are, who you're talking to. But I do believe that the vast majority of Americans actually have common sense, and they're thinking about their children. And they know that if we don't do something about the debt, that their children will have no future. They know that if we don't do something about immigration, there won't be any identity in this country. And on it goes, dealing with terrorism, dealing with education, dealing with the prison system. You can't just go on talking about it like the traditional politicians have done. And Hillary Clinton is the epitome of traditional politicians.
And she certainly had enough time to be able to do things and accomplish great things for the country, and that's an argument that your whole team has been making. Dr. Carson, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and tonight was the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly.
And joining me now, my